The next thing we're going to talk about is assignments. Assignments, it's important for you to know that this tool, just like discussions, will create a column in your gradebook. It's going to allow students to submit work products online or on their mobile devices. There are a lot of different options, and I'm going to talk to you about each one of them. They're all up on the screen right now. And lots of different ways that you're going to be able to accept work from students. So everything from files to media objects, you're going to be able to accept. And we already talked a little bit about the fact that, you know, because we have that really nice mobile app, that you're going to be able to rethink maybe some of the ways that you accept work from students now and some of the different types of assignments that you're getting back from them. So I want to show you, if I look at that assignment that you were working on, if those of you who didn't do it, but it looks like most of you did, thank you very much. You will have noticed a couple of things. One is that had a rubric attached. Students do see the rubric when they're doing the work. So they are going to know how they're going to be assessed. They see the full-on rubric. For this one, you were only able to submit a file to me. You could have either uploaded a file from your device, or you also saw an Office 365 tab. So that just happens by default because that's what's integrated here for you guys. They're either going to be able to look on their computers for the file, or if it lives in their OneDrive, it makes it easy for them to turn it in. After you guys turned in your assignment, the submit button turned into what? Who noticed that? Resubmit. That is the default. That is what happens for all students after they turn in an assignment. It lets them know that the assignment's been submitted, and then the button turns into resubmit. There's not a way to turn that off either. It's built that way because hopefully they're going to get some great feedback and want to revise an assignment and turn it back in. So that's just the functionality. If anyone wants to resubmit the assignment right now, just so I can show what that looks like to the instructor, that'd be super helpful for me, because I want to be able to show you what it looks like and how you can tell that a student has turned it back in. So I'm going to go ahead into the SpeedGrader and show you what an assignment looks like to the instructor. I got to it right from my to-do list. So that's my favorite way to get there, is anything I need to grade is going to be right there on my to-do list. Okay, so let's take a look at what an assignment looks like in the SpeedGrader. For you guys, I asked you to upload a file. Okay, so here is Matt's, which looks amazing. Thanks, Matt. So nice. Notice that I didn't have to download his paper, so it's going to render for me in the SpeedGrader. The really nice part about the SpeedGrader is I don't have to worry about what file types my students turn in. It's going to render for me whatever file type that is, even if I don't have it on my computer. And I told the other group yesterday, we've only so far found one file type that doesn't show up, and it's the file type that gets output by a smartboard. So if you use that one a lot, then it's not going to render for you in the SpeedGrader. But otherwise, you don't have to worry about whatever kind of file the students are turning into you.
What about turn it in? Does that work with these submissions?
Yes. Is that one that's being vetted right now? Okay. Yeah, so turn it in will work. What it does is it kind of overlays in here so that you'll see the originality report when you're looking at it in the SpeedGrader. So this is Matt's paper, and because Matt turned in it's a doc, right? So docs, Excel files, PDFs, and PowerPoints if it's any of those extension types, you get additional functionality. So I'm going to get this annotations panel up here at the top where I can put in drop comments. And I can even pick different colors. And then I can leave comments over here for Matt. This becomes an interactive document, so when Matt gets this back, he's going to be able to reply to it if he wants to. And then I could also highlight. So I've got a highlighter with a bunch of different colors. You can also type in text. You could strike through. So if I wanted to say, I'm not too sure right here about this. And then you also get this freeform writer, which this one doesn't work awesome when I'm trying to do it on my laptop. But this is where the teacher app with the grading tools inside of it really come in handy. So if you were on your iPhone or an iPad, or you were on anything that allows you to write on it with a stylus, then you could really mark this paper up the way you could if you were using a regular pen and pencil. Now, this one had a rubric, so I'm just going to move the paper over a little bit so that when I click on View Rubric, we can see the whole thing. Now, I know you guys have rubrics in D2L. I don't know D2L that well, so I don't know if it works like this. But this is one of my favorite things about grading in Canvas with a rubric, is that this, I just have to click on the rating I want to give it. Those points are going to populate over here in the point area. I can also give him specific criteria comment. And then I can just continue clicking through and awarding him the points for every one of those. It's going to total that up for me, and it's going to give him that grade. I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. It'll populate that grade there in that box that has just gone into my gradebook, and also the feedback went back to Matt because I didn't have this one muted. So where that will show up for him is on his Canvas dashboard. And then I can also give him overall comments. And just like with the discussion, we can send back an attachment, we can do an audio video comment, and then because I'm in Chrome, I have that speech recognition button. Now, Matt can respond to me, and also if let's say he really blew it on this, or this was a rough draft and I wanted him to take all my feedback in and turn it back in, he could, and then I'd be able to reuse that rubric and give him an updated score. All right, so I'm going to go down here to Jonathan. I thought you were saying Spike was your first name, and I was going to be like, that is awesome.
I wouldn't have gotten hired.
All right, so Jonathan has turned it in 2 times, so this is how that looks. So if a student turns it in multiple times, you get to pick which one you want to view. So it's going to timestamp it and also give it a date. So if I wanted to look at his most recent submission, Canvas is just going to warn you and say, hey, this is not the most recent submission, just to let you know. But you can grade whichever one you want. All right, questions about what it looks like to grade an assignment? I only gave you guys the option of turning in a file. There's other options that you can accept work as well. So we're going to take a look at them. One is like a website URL. If I had asked or allowed you to turn in a URL to me, it would render that website here in this window for me. If I had asked you to turn in a video to me or an audio file, that would be over here and I would just have to click play. So never in the SpeedGrader do you have to download any of these things in order to see them. You still can. You're always going to have that downloadability, and some instructors like to do it. I don't. I would rather just do it in here. But if you ever do want to download all of your student submissions, you're going to be able to do that. There's just not a need to anymore. All right, so I'm going to go back here into my course, and we're going to take a look at how do we build an assignment. So I have this area where, and if you want to follow along with me, feel free to build your assignment. I'm back here in my Play Around course, my master course area. And I called mine Panda Essay. So I'm going to come in here to click Edit and see what options we have when we're building an assignment. So just like there's our rich content editor, I told you before that this is what you'll always use to build. And if you, I think this is about 60% of Canvas. If you can get comfortable with using this, you're going to be just fine. So I would tell my students in here what it is I want them to do. whatever it is I want them to see, put in that box up there. And then, just like we did with the discussion, we can say how many points it's worth. If we want to put that into an assignment group, maybe I have a group now that's called essays. And just like we did with the discussion, we can say how we want that grade to display. Maybe for this one, I want that to display as a percentage. With assignments, you will see this option to not count it toward the final grade. I can see a lot of reasons why you might want to create an assignment that way. Maybe for things like a rough draft, you want them to turn it in, give them feedback, but it's not going to count toward their grade. You're still going to get all of the same grading tools, and you can use a rubric. It's just not going to create one of those columns in your grade book. Students will know that it's not counting toward their final grade, though. So if you click that, they'll see that. You're going to see submission type next, and there are 4 different options. I'm going to tell you how you would use all of them, or how you might want to use them. The first submission type is no submission. I wouldn't use this for something like this. That's an essay where I'm saying how many points it's worth. How I've seen this used is to put a reading assignment on a student's calendar, or a project assignment day on their calendar, because with this we're going to get that assigned to box down here with a due date. So anything I might want to reinforce, a date I wouldn't want them to miss, I want it to show up on their calendar and their syllabus, I could create a 0-point no submission assignment, so that they would be really alerted to the fact that this is super important. The next submission type is online. We're going to skip that for a second, and I'm going to talk about on paper. So if I create the submission type of on paper, the students will see it in Canvas, can still give it a due date. I'm going to get a column in my grade book for it, but there's not going to be a place in Canvas to turn it in. They're going to actually have to do something in front of you or hand you something. It could be that you're keeping a Dropbox somewhere else that they're turning it in. You don't want them for some reason to turn it into Canvas. Maybe you're asking them to still email it to you, which you don't need to do anymore. But all of those could be options. That's what, on paper, there's nowhere for them to turn it in Canvas. The submission type of external tool, if you do have turn it in when you have that in your system, you would use the submission type of external tool. The one type of external tool that's in there right now that I want to show, I'm going to go ahead and click Find, is this idea of an Office 365 cloud assignment. And I want to show you what this will do. So my example I'm going to show you is a Word document that looks a lot like a worksheet. I have questions on it that I want my students to fill out right on here. I don't want them to have to make a copy of it. I want them just when they click into Canvas to get their own version of it, and then they're going to be able to turn it in to me. So real quickly, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so that's going to load this up. The way the external tool works, or the cloud assignment, is for a student, this would be an active document. They could type right on it in here. It is a Word document that lives in my drive, but the first time the students click on it inside of Canvas, they're going to be able to type on it right in here. They also have a copy of it that's going to go in their OneDrive, and then they'll get a submit button when they're all done. So you could use it for things like a Word document. I've seen it done for like a lab that you want them to fill out, or a graphic organizer. Maybe you want them to get like a starter copy of a PowerPoint where there's, certain facets of it that you want them to be able to fill in. You're giving them, the outline or the shell. And just by virtue of you creating one of these cloud assignments, they're getting their own copy. And then it's theirs. They can work on it inside of Canvas even. They don't have to, move away from Canvas. And then they'll get a submit button. So the external tool, the assignment type of external tool, you will use it for, there could be some other things. Was Kaltura an assignment type that you had in D2L? Like where you could students could use it to turn something in?
I use it for speeches,
Okay.
just in the discussions,
Okay.
like an attachment. Right.
Okay. Some of the tools that I know are being vetted could also be connected this way, where you could use them as an assignment type. And then they would talk back to your Canvas gradebook. So stay tuned on what potentially more things could come in there to external tool. I think for most of the times when you're building in Canvas, you're going to use the submission type of online. And when you select that, you see that there are 4 different options. You could select any or all of these. I could give my students all of these options if I wanted to leave it wide open for them and let them pick how they want to turn their work in. But each one of these has a very specific use case, so I'll tell you what each one is. Text entry. Students are only going to get that rich content editor box. This is only good for things, I think, a paragraph or less. Couple reasons why. It's not super fun to grade it. You don't get that fun annotation tool with a text entry. On the student end, it is not an autosave environment. So when they are working in that text entry box, if for any reason their internet went out or something, they would lose it. So you don't ever want students to turn in a very long assignment to you that's just a text entry. The second option is website URL. It'll give them a space to put in a link to wherever, maybe they're hosting something somewhere else, they're keeping a blog, they could turn that URL into you. When you look at it in the SpeedGrader, it will render that for you in that window. The next option is media recordings. If they're on their laptop, they'll use those, the regular Canvas tool that we've got. If they're on their mobile app, they'll be able to use all of those tools that are on their phone. And most of them have got a really nice microphone, a great video recorder. So you could really get some exciting submissions from students if you're accepting media recordings. And the last option in there is file uploads. You can restrict the upload file types if you want to. So if you are certain you only want students to turn into you a PowerPoint, then you could just type PPT, or maybe I am also going to accept a PDF. So whatever limits I place in here, Canvas will keep students from turning in any of those other file types. So if, in this case, my students tried to turn in a doc, it's not in my list right there, Canvas would say, your instructor is only accepting PowerPoints and PDFs. Student submissions do not count against your course's space limit, and students have no limit. Canvas wants students to be able to do whatever it is they need to do. For that reason, there's no limit on their media length. If they're creating a video, it's not like Canvas stops them at 30 minutes or anything like that. There's very few limitations on students with files. And we recently just upped our instructor baseline limit. It used to be 500 M, whatever that is. MG, and now it's 1 gig is the baseline. So we've expanded our, yep. So I could give all these if I wanted to. By default, if you use file uploads, they're always going to see that Office tab as well.